1 in 8 teenagers now report having misused or abused prescription drugs. David Sheff is the author of Beautiful Boy, about his son's long struggle with addiction, and his new book, Clean, Overcoming Addiction and Ending America's Greatest Tragedy. David Sheff talks about the dangers of teens and young adults misusing prescription drugs.
Every single day I get letters, calls from family members, often parents, whose kids have, in many cases, overdosed and died. Often they start on a drug like OxyContin, Vicodin, which, by the way, they usually get or often get from their parents' medicine cabinets. And then, very quickly become addicted, and when they can no longer get those pills, when they can no longer afford them or they're harder to get, often they'll turn to the other opiate, which is heroin.
David Sheff tells us about his son Nick, who had a drug problem, on what steps he took to help lead his son towards recovery.
When Nick started using, I excused it away. I sort of said, and even teachers sort of, Nick's a great kid. He's a good student, he's an athlete. Just, relax. Drugs are out there, kids experiment. I found out he was smoking pot when he was only 12 years old, drinking a bit when he was 13, 14. And I was worried, but I thought, kids experiment. And very quickly his drug use escalated. By the time he was 17, 18 years old, he was using drugs like methamphetamine. He'd tried heroin. Pretty soon he started injecting drugs. And within the next year or two, we almost lost him many, many times. He ended up in emergency rooms. The doctor once called me and said, we have your son here. We think we may have to amputate his arm because it had become infected from injecting drugs.
It took my dad a while before he got to the point where he kind of said to me, Nick, I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to let you come home, unless you go into a treatment program. I feel like once he made that decision to sort of draw that line with me, that really changed everything. The way that I was living was not really living. It was, I was in a huge amount of pain, and I was, completely self-destructive. And so I needed to have someone draw that line with me and just tell me basically that they weren't going to help me unless I got into treatment. And as scary as that must have been for him, I think that it definitely saved my life.
Now I know that we cannot be in denial. We cannot ignore warning signs. A pediatrician said to me, if you think your child is using drugs, they're using drugs. So at the first signs, we have to take it seriously and get help. That can mean talking to teachers, counselors, drug addiction specialists, but don't ignore it. Certain kids are at higher risk to use drugs and to have drug problems. So we need to pay attention closely to our kids, not just to determine whether or not they're using drugs, but kids who are suffering depression, who are having anxiety problems, who are really stressed at school, who are children of divorce, kids who have learning disabilities, and of course kids who have a whole range of mental illnesses. I mean, if we are seeing our kids struggle with anything, the message is don't wait. Go see a pediatrician, go see a counselor, a therapist, until you figure out what's going on. One of the places where there is a wealth of information is on the website for the partnership. It's drugfree.org. They have a whole section on helping parents identify the warning signs. There's a toll-free number. The partnership has launched the Medicine Abuse Project, which is about educating us about this problem, the #1 killer of our kids, prescription drug misuse. They say that addiction is a family disease, and I didn't get it until I realized that we were all in this in a way that just devastated us for years. It takes a lot of work to survive it.